Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. I am Angel from Lima in Peru, and this is my channel, Reading Means Life. I am very happy because 3 days ago, we Limeños celebrated the 484th anniversary of the city of Lima. And today I want to tell you about this book, The City of the Reyes, the Chavez, and the Quispe. And I will explain what the title means. It was written in 2004 by the Peruvian researchers Rolando Arellano and David Burgos, but this edition is from 2010. Well, in the preface, there is an interview with Mr. Arellano. He says that there isn't a Limeño identity yet, and that being a Highlander is not considered a stigma. Well, I disagree with that because in my everyday experience, I have noticed how um, much discrimination exists towards those people. Uh, However, I agree that Lima and the cones is something to disagree with. Okay, considering Lima as just the central part and the cones, north, east, and west outside the city, when in fact that is absurd, since the cones, the conos, have more population than the central area of the city. Well, in my opinion, this book is too optimistic at times. However, well, in it is nice that they mention in the preface that there was a kind of metamorphosis from a Spanish city to a Chola city, or a mestizo city that also includes or involves the Amazonian and especially the Andean component. Well, they mentioned that Lima went from a walled Creole city, a Spanish city, facing the Andean world that came, okay, I would say like an avalanche, okay, to the city of Lima, and there that created a fear to meet or to know that new or that other Lima. There was a Cholo invasion, right, which generated a new Lima. And he predicted that those Cholos, right, those mestizo or Andean people will govern, will rule the city. And one of the objectives of this book is to show that there is life beyond the ghetto. What ghetto? The central area of Lima. Well, I know it's easier for one who lives in the so-called cones to visit the central area than the other way around. This book is divided in different chapters. The first chapter is on page 30. It's about ancient Lima and current Lima. In 1821, when the independence of my country was proclaimed, there were 17,000 whites, 9,000 blacks, 4,700 mestizos, and 4,000 Indians. Some people considered a kind of paradise, okay, a lost paradise in which everybody was in their place. Um, However, during the Republic, especially in the 20th century, invasions, shanty towns appeared, okay, slums appeared in different parts of the city in the 1940s, 1950s, in the 1970s. El Salvador, which was an iconic area in the south of Lima, appeared. Many people escaped terrorism during the 1980s and 1990s, and we can call or we can mention this concept, Knaben Lima. Knaben might be not exactly the same, but it might be similar to the so-called suburbs, but they were not established formally, but by invasion, okay, taking possession of the territory there. In the second chapter, which is called A City for All, he or they, okay, Mr. Arellano and Mr. Burgos compare the two types of limeños, the traditional ones, okay, and the immigrant ones, okay, in three different generations. For Knab and Lima, the first generation, they come from the provinces, especially from the Andes. They were in a terrible disadvantage. They were discriminated, and they try to help each other. right? The second generation were born in Lima, but they had both influences, okay? Andean influence because of their parents, and also the influence of the city in terms of clothes, food, musical taste, etc. And the third generation, well, um, the techno generation, he calls, they are modern, they like electronica, music. They have maybe lost that contact with the world of their grandparents. About Central Lima, again, there are some generations, right? The first one are the traditional ones, right? The ones that long those colonial and ancient visions of Lima, which was not like that necessarily. The second one is the people who start having some relationship with the new limeños. Those relationships were at school, at work, even romantic relationship, even having a family, right? And the third generation is the most similar ones. Okay, so they have more openness, they show more tolerance towards the same people in the other generation, right? Okay, so they might interact. They are in perhaps an equal position, right, with same challenges to face. They in this book they show a lot of statistics, right, which it helps a lot because it clarifies the many facts that are mentioned. For example, 20%, 25% of limeños in central Lima are the mazamorreros. Mazamorrero is a concept that means a person who has all his ancestors from Lima, at least parents, grandparents, and great grandparents. 12% of the population in the metropolitan area of Lima, including central and urban Lima, have parents and grandparents being born in Lima. And there are six lifestyles. They don't talk about socioeconomic levels A, B, C, D, but lifestyles. Okay, so the highest ones are the sophisticated. They have the highest salary, the most sophisticated lifestyle. Of course, they value service of high quality. The progressive ones, they are workers. They are business people. They started in a low position, but they, have the desire to grow professionally, to grow in business. The modern ones are ladies, are women, opposite to the traditional ones. They not only aim to be housewives, but to study and work. Right, the adapted ones, they are not conformist, but perhaps they are not business people. They tend to follow the status quo, being perhaps people who work in offices, personnel in many companies, teachers like me. The conservatives, who are also women, the conservative women in terms of fashion, in terms of makeup, they have the traditional role that is expected of a woman, being a housewife. And the resigned ones are in the lowest position. Most of them are indigenous people, and perhaps they prefer a simple life. They don't risk so much. About the third chapter is current Lima. We can talk about the cones, as I said, north, east, and west. We cannot talk about those places as poor areas. Many big economic groups, many big firms failed or took too long to notice that potential that this population have. Okay, they believe that those people were simply poor, which is not true because they generate a lot of money, of course, especially in the northern area of Lima, okay, which by 2004 had 2.2 million people. It was the first in almost everything. The first one to have shopping centers, supermarkets, private universities, clinics from the central area. The eastern part of Lima, it was the more there were immigrants from different parts of Lima, north or south, central Lima. In that area, the biggest or the most populated district is located, San Juan de Lurigancho, with more than 1 million people. Then we have southern Lima, which has most of its population coming from the Andes, and it's the least densely populated area, perhaps the poorest, but with the most perspectives of growth. Then we have Central Lima, which is the most densely populated. There are very, very old districts like Rimac and Lima, but there are also new districts like San Borja. It receives services first. It can be the model, okay, for the other areas. It is the richest zone, and it has most Limeños with parents and grandparents from Lima. In general, the average number of people in families in Lima is five, 51% of women, 49% of men. About Conurban Lima, more than 50% are younger than 25. They become independent economically younger than in Central Lima. They have a relationship. They start a family at a younger age than people in Central Lima. They prefer technical education in order to work fast. There are many, many statistics, and there 90% of people have or own a house, some property. Only 17% are in the formal economy, okay, which of course I can notice that hasn't changed so much. In the fourth chapter is about Lima and its future. Lima will continue growing, of course, but not only in territory, but especially okay in height. Okay, more and more blocks of apartments are being built. There will be a more defined culture, more homogeneous. People will be more open to international fashions, international trends. The southern and the eastern part of Lima will grow more. As I told you, the northern area of Lima took it faster, okay, to grow. The northern area of Lima already has mega businesses, right? Um, Lima will grow, especially to the south, to areas that nowadays are just beaches. And the new Limeño will be a better consumer. They will be more progressive, more modern. So conservative people will decrease in number. Okay, so they will have the initiative to start businesses, and we will continue preferring quality in services and products, not necessarily Peruvian. This is something that they recommend companies to focus, not only offering products, Peruvian products, and appealing to the fact that they are Peruvian, but they are Peruvian, but also with high quality. Okay, so that Lima, with all those that mixture of races and traditions, there should be respect and admiration for differences in order to achieve an equality, okay, that makes a mature society. So even though 15 years have passed since the publication of this book, I really recommend it because of the statistics, the conclusions, and the fact that they showed, perhaps it was not exactly a pioneer, but a very, very important book showing the or the many faces of the city of Lima, right? Analyzing in detail, interviewing people, and showing many life stories, personal histories, in order to make it more human, make the statistics, nearer to us. So I really recommend it. I hope that you can find this book. I know it's in Spanish. It might be kind of complicated to find, but if you have the opportunity to read it, I really, really recommend it. Okay, bye bye. See you.